The 250 GTO in 1978, you couldn't give it away. In the early 80s and into the 90s even, seeing an exotic car was a completely different experience versus seeing one today, because it's almost like you're almost numb by it. I mean, you see them all the time. Ferrari has significantly increased their production, which means you're going to see a lot more of them. However, seeing a TR or a 308, a 328 Mondial or anything on the road, man, it still turns my head because they're just such shocking designs for the time. When you would run across even a 911 Turbo, those with the big hips, and oh man, just the sound that those things make. I remember seeing a 911 Turbo on 400 back in the day. That thing was shooting flames every time he shifted, and just blew my mind. And then, I remember seeing a yellow 348 Spider on 400, and it's just, whoa. I mean, they're just gorgeous cars. Seeing the exotics now is totally different. I mean, you would have to see something really exotic, like a Veyron, a Chiron, even a Pagani or anything like that. That's what really gets people's attention now. And, everything else is kind of, hey, that's a beautiful car, great. For my 18th birthday, my parents took me to the Cavallino restaurant. And for lunchtime, just all the workers in their little lab uniforms would come in and just walk across the street and leave. It was not a big deal to them. But on my 18th birthday, I'm sitting there, all the dishes and everything have the prancing horse emblem and the Scuderia Ferrari everywhere. And I was literally about to pass out. And then we had lunch, and then we walked across the street, and I was like, well, I mean, we don't have an appointment. Well, let's see what happens. And we literally walked into the factory, and they showed us around. We saw everything. We saw all the F1 cars, production lines. I mean, we couldn't take pictures. I saw Piero Ferrari, and he gave me a bunch of brochures that I still have right now. And that meant a whole bunch. That's when we started exchanging, little love messages. And he was such a superstar that it enabled me to look at him like any celebrity or rock star. But, he could walk around and people wouldn't really know who he is. But boy, he looks just like Enzo now, doesn't he? It's unbelievable. We hung out, and, you see a 308 go by, and you see some Testarossas and stuff go by, and then like a prototype would go by, like a 512 TR, and we were like, what? This is like 1989, and you could tell that things are different and that they're trying different things, and it was incredible. Enzo died in 89. Things went ape in 90 and 91. 92, things started slowing down and cooling off a little bit because they realized Ferrari wasn't going anywhere, but just because Enzo wasn't watching what everyone was doing, didn't mean as much. But the cars that were made during his time were desirable. They're all desirable. Ferraris are an amazing car because, there are some that aren't collectible, so to speak, but they're just so much fun to have and be around and play with and tinker with. So the market maybe went up about 60%. I mean, remember, people were buying TRs for 100, 125, 130, and then bam, literally overnight they were 200, 225, 250, just getting anything that you can get because they were brand new TRs with a wrapper, just wrappers on the seats and the stickers and everything. And same happened with the F40s. The money for those, I guess when they first came out, was like 230, 240,000, I think. And then they went up to almost $1 million and overnight. And that was a complete sensation. So everything cooled off several years later. Once people realized, like right now, you could pick up the phone and go buy an F40 right now. You're going to pay 1.6, 1.5 for it, but you can get one. You could go get a LaFerrari, a Parita. These cars are available. Back in the 80s, they weren't available. You couldn't just pick up a phone and go get a 512 BBI. Or a 412 or anything like that. Being on the school bus and you seeing a yellow Ferrari go by and you're like, screaming down, I think it was 78 or Highway 78 or something in Atlanta, just blew me away. It doesn't feel like that anymore because there are just so many cars, and maybe people just don't care anymore as much as we used to. But a discerning eye will always pick out an exotic or a special car. Hell, even an i8 still turns my head. Those are cool. But seeing a classic Ferrari is almost a rarity at this point. Back in the 80s, only the extremely wealthy could have this car and maintain it correctly and use it. Not just park it in your garage and never use it like, a lot of people do, but to use a car in the 80s like that. A Lamborghini Countach, mind-blowing. I remember seeing these cars and just, at FAF Motor Cars, they always had a couple of Countachs sitting around. And I mean, I always took a photograph of the Countach because it was like an alien ship. You thought the TR was really cool, but looking at the Countach, oh my gosh. All the connoisseurs knew what Ferrari was all about. They knew the sound and how to drive these Ferraris, but no one else was able to experience it because in the 60s and 70s, they were just used cars. Nobody gave a damn about them. They were just used cars. And Gerald Rausch always told me that because I would go bananas over seeing the value of a car back in the 90s or the early 2000s. And he would just argue with me and just, Mitch, they were just cars. You got to understand. The 250 GTO in 1978, you couldn't give it away. I mean, there's pictures of a GTO sitting on a trailer. You remember that picture? Just sitting in a field. It was just a car. Some guy gave one to Victoria High School and just for the shop to use. It's mind-blowing now. But again, it was just a car. Just a car. Now, you can't just say that about a LaFerrari or an FXX. You're never going to find one of those in a field, So it has changed in that sense. But so in the 70s, only the connoisseurs really knew about Ferraris. Only the very, very wealthy. So they were still very unknown, if you will. And then when TV shows started showing these cars, and people were like, wow, that's a beautiful car. I think what the show was called The Pretenders with Roger Moore. They had a 246 GT in there, and that is, one of the most stunning designs ever. I mean, it looks like a beautiful woman laying down, right? And people were like, wow, that's pretty interesting. Peter Sellers had many Ferraris in the UK, and people started paying attention to that. So people, it was almost like building blocks. And then all these TV shows started coming out, like Miami Vice, Magnum PI, obviously. That show almost saved Ferrari, basically, because the 308 is what saved Ferrari. And if it wasn't for that show and, Miami Vice showing these cars, just mind-blowing images of white Countachs shooting down and, the white TR, it all helped. I mean, it was all an absolute marketing brilliance at its best. So the interest became greater and greater. In the 80s, everyone was, whoa, what is that? And then you start seeing them in New York and Miami, and people would, see them in magazines and just, oh my God. And so late 80s, people really were desiring them. It was almost like a Mona Lisa. You knew you couldn't afford it, but you just yearned for it. You wanted it. Oh my gosh, I never wanted something more in my whole life. I went to military school. Even in military school, I had pictures of Ferraris all over the place, and these other guys had pictures of, cute girls and things like that. And I liked Ferraris. And so that kind of festered in me. And the more I was exposed to them, the more I had to have it. I mean, it's almost an addiction to me, honest to gosh. The smell when you get into an old Ferrari, it's intoxicating to me. It really transports me to another time. And I can't tell you enough how much I enjoy that. And thankfully I've been, in businesses where I've been able to spend a lot of time with these cars and drive them and help fix them and paint them, restore them, and, just buy all the parts for them and stuff, and just know the idiosyncrasies of some of these cars. And even to this day, I just am fascinated by these cars. My friend Mark had a 86 metallic black Testarossa. Ironically, which is why I have a metallic black 308 right now, because that color, you could almost fall into it. He would go out of town a lot and let me drive the car, and he just keep some miles on it and keep the oil turned around. And so I was out driving that thing in Roswell one day. Didn't break a single law, but it was just, I was a young kid driving a black Testarossa in Roswell. So I got pulled over. They said, hey, we just wanted to make sure that you are who you are and check out the car a little bit. And you got to understand that. I mean, seeing that car in the evening was like seeing a spaceship on the road. I mean, we used to call it the pancake because it's just almost as wide as it is long, and, big hips. And oh gosh, that car was amazing. And so they were super friendly and checked out the car and checked my ID. And, sure enough, Mark had insurance on it. And they said, all right, well, we hope you have a great day. And I'll never forget, his license plate was 912 HSE. And that's what it says on the warning that they gave me. They said, just be safe out there. I was like, I was being safe, but I know you wanted to see the car. And they were like, yeah, we just wanted to see what this was, because it was very low, very wide, and just didn't look like anything else on the road. you got to understand that these car companies, they still have the passion. Some of the older guys still have the passion, but their bottom line, it's a business. They just want to make money. The more money they make, the more they can, develop new cars and race and buy merchandise and sponsorships and stuff. But that has completely changed. And even if I was literally growing up as a teenager right now, I think that some of those cars are very interesting. But to be honest, they're just not as interesting as they were in the 80s. And you could still, like buying a Ferrari today, a Pista or a SF90 Stradale, they are out of this world. The 812 Superfast is one of my favorite cars on the planet. I've been fortunate enough to drive several of them, and they're just fantastic. With that said, it's not as exciting as an old Ferrari. I like stirring that gearbox. I like the stuttering H pattern and all the old Ferraris, and the passion's still there. But I don't know. I think they're making too many of them.
If you love VINwiki, you'll have heard us talk about minimizing ownership cost on exotic cars. But the guys at Exotic Car Hacks have developed a system, an educational resource that you can access now using exoticcarhacks.com/VINwiki and get the best membership rates that they've offered since Black Friday. It shows you how to leverage financing, minimize what you pay, maximize how you sell it, and minimize the cost while you've got it. So be sure to join their community of owners and enthusiasts today at exoticcarhacks.com/VINwiki, and it'll be easier than ever to buy, own, and sell and love the car of your dreams.